In the last class we finished with the idea of when Abraham answered to the angel, Hineni, here I am, that Hineni is a word that actually is used when something is given over to another. The leadership is given over, and we went through that last week. So what did the angel say to angel is a messenger? He said, Al tishlach yadcha, do not send your hand to the Na'ar. Now, the angel of Hashem is an angel, is a messenger. And it doesn't say the word an angel of Elohim. It says an angel of Hashem. So we will discuss more about that because he speaks twice. So we'll have a second chance to talk about the angel, I think. Let's see. Okay. So it says, don't send your hand. Now, when we say Vayomer, and he said, we already spoke before that what the word Vayomer and he said is not the way we speak. You're talking about Abraham being in a soul world, in a spirit world. You're talking about an angel, which is a spiritual being. It wasn't words as we talk, although that's the way people imagine it. It could mean he heard a voice, which is one way, or a frequency, or it was just an internal knowing. He heard an internal voice. Or in the level he was, it just the communication. We call it saying, but it's not actual speech. Do not continue to. It's not just a do not. Do not continue doing what you're doing. Al tishlach yadcha, don't send or give over. Shlach means to send or give over. Yadcha, your hand, which can be strength or leadership, which we spoke, that's what Abraham is doing, is giving over the leadership to Isaac. And so even he was giving over, but he didn't know when to stop. So this messenger, which is called an angel, he needed a message when to stop. When you're focused into something, you don't stop. You don't see anything going on around you. You don't know what's happening. You just keep going. So he needed something to tell him to stop. So it's called an angel or a messenger. Yodcha, your hand. In the book of Job, chapter 12, it says, in his hand is the life of all life. The angel is saying to Abraham, now that you've seen God, you know that there is life after death because you left the physical. Don't continue to hold onto the child, onto Isaac. No hand is needed because he's already been consumed in the energy, the fire of elevation. In other words, you've achieved your purpose and you have to go move on for yourself and let him go on for his journey. Pirkei de Rebbe says the soul returned to the body and he freed it. And it stood on its feet, and Isaac knew that the ability of giving life to the dead was a reality. Because he had died, they had left the body, Isaac was disconnected, and now he came back to the body. So he knew there was an idea of life after death, both on a spiritual plane, and also the fact that he came back to a physical. Shows that even if you're dead, you can still come back. There are people that have died, clinically been dead, have left and gone spaces and come back. A minute later, an hour later, a day later, a few days later, this has happened to quite a number of people on this earth. So they know that there's an idea of the soul coming back into the body even after you've died. Now, we don't have people running around now that it's happened after many years. After a century, you don't open a grave and it just walks out. But we definitely have, in a short term of hours and days, we've had people that have come back and told stories. So the Rekeach explains that the words, do not send your hand, refers to the soul that was returned to the body. So what happened is, after they achieved it, the soul came back into the body, and Abraham still wanted to do more. Like, it's back in the body, what else do I have to do? So the message was, you don't have to do anything. Just stand back. El Hanar, to the lad. You've achieved everything that's related to the lad. And in the commentaries, the next words which go on, don't do anything to him, seem superfluous, but we'll explain that as well. So the word nar, I've explained some of it, but we'll do a little bit more today. Isaac is called a nar, a lad, because he is serving the Creator in a designated role. So the idea of a nar is someone serving the Creator. So let's just go through a few ideas of the word nar, which is normally translated as a child, a lad. And we had earlier, it says Abraham took the two na'arov, his two lads, and he returned to them later. It talks about these lads. It doesn't say who they are. So there are commentaries that say, well, it applies to either two special lads, which it mentions names, but the Torah doesn't say it. So obviously it's not really about those lads, because it doesn't really matter. It's irrelevant how many people he took with him. He's a wealthy guy. He always had people that went with him. Who cares how big his entourage was? It's not that relevant. So the word nar itself has many meanings. Boy, young, youth, child, childish, a servant. It could also mean to stir. Lanar is to stir something, to shake it, to awaken. It's a movement. It could be letting out a sound. It could be a donkey braying, it could be a lion roaring, or it could be spun off flax. It's also called nar. In the common story, there's two lads. Now, in a deeper sense, it has another meaning. And the meaning is alluded to by the words, his lads. It uses the word his na'arov. Not just two lads, but it says his. And it also uses the word es. Throughout the whole story, it uses es again and again and again, to bring out something deeper in the story. That's why it doesn't have a translation. In order for Abraham to go on the journey, he had to summon his inner strength and knowledge. Even though he was old, he took upon the journey like a young man. And the verse is referring to his connecting with the strength of his younger years. So he had to retake the energy of his youth. The word na'arov, translated lads, could mean his youth and foolishness, in a positive way. The term nar refers more to a presence than actual years. And we've mentioned before, but we'll speak a little bit more about it. We find in Exodus, says Yeshua ben Nun, Joshua was a nar. He would not leave the tent of Moses. And it's interesting, the response of Mariyatz, which I saw recently. He says, and Abraham rose in the morning. Vayashkem Avram Abeka refers to the morning of his life, his younger years before he became old. So normally say he got up in the morning to do things, but it's not talking about what he did now, it's talking about what he did previously, that when he was young, he woke up then. And the verse states that Abraham was old, coming with his days. He had achieved control and focus in each day of his life. He rose onto his feet and tied or controlled his physical self. The chamor, the donkey, is his chumrius, the physical self. And through this, he was able to take that which he had achieved to help him on the journey that he needed to go with Isaac. So I'm just going back over that to help the flow here. Now, with the nar, it says, and Hashem would speak with Moses face to face, like an ish speaks to a friend. A man speaks to a friend. He returned to the camp, and his attendant, Joshua, the son of Nun, was a nar. He would not depart from the tent. Now the word nar in that verse is superfluous. It could just say, and Joshua ben Nun would not depart. It doesn't have to use the word nar. The Ibn Ezra explains that how old was he? He was 56 years old because it was 40 years in the desert, 14 years in Israel. He passed away at 110, so he was about 56 years old at this point in time. Give or take a few days. So obviously he wasn't a young man. Now the Ramban, Nachmanides, writes that nar also means attendant. In Kings 2, it says, Elisha, the prophet, said to Gehazi, Na'aro, his attendant. And later on, there was stories about Gehazi, what type of a guy he was, but that's another issue. Later on it says, and the king was speaking with Gehazi, Na'ar, attendant of the man of God, saying. And when the king was speaking with him, this was many years after Elisha had passed away. So obviously he was not a young boy anymore. He was already an older man. And we find that Avner was general. We're talking about the wars of David, of King David. It says Avner in Samuel 2, chapter 2. It says, Avner said to Yoav, let the soldiers, Na'arim, rise and play before us. And it says another verse that 10 Na'arim, attendants, armor bearers, circled around. Now, if you're talking about the guys carrying the armor for the general, they weren't little boys. They were strong men. Strong soldiers, definitely. Not little children. So, while the word means attendant, it also doesn't necessarily tell you the age. In the verse in Exodus, where it speaks about Moses, about Yeshua, it says the attendant of Moses and Na'ar. So it already has the word attendant there. So why would it add the word Na'ar if it means attendant again? He attended him twice. So Ramban brings a verse, Nar HaMelech Mishrosav, by Queen Esther, and Achashverosh, it says, the Na'arim of the king and his attendants. And he distinguishes there are different types of attendants. These were personal. His attendants means personal attendants. There were the court attendants, and they were personal. So he makes that difference. And he says that was a difference between Yeshua and the others, that the other people also studied with Moses or served him, but Yeshua, the difference is Yeshua was constant. He was always there. So it adds the word nar just to say that he was different from the other attendants. He uses it twice. Now, the Ramban, for those Nachmanides, he lived in Spain, in Europe, and he had in Barcelona. There was a public debate, which he was in Aragon, I think, with the king of Aragon, where he with the priest there, and it was about Christianity and Judaism, and Nachmanides Ramban won the debate. But because he won the debate, if he wouldn't have won the debate, they would have killed all the Jews or sent them out at that point in time. But because he won the debate, they couldn't do anything, but his life was in danger because they didn't like losing. So you're doomed if you do or you don't. And this is not the only one. In public debates in history with Christian and Christianity, we lost either way because they didn't have an idea of losing. It was just how to get, either how to convert or kill the others. There was no idea of losing. So he had to run away, and he ran to Israel. He could have left the country to another one, but he went to Israel. And while he was in Israel, he had written a commentary on Torah that was printed already. And while he was there, he made a lot of changes to his commentary. And a number of those changes had to do with the fact that he was now in Israel. And he saw the land differently. He related to things of the land more because he was there. And so one of the things that he changed is in this, he added, was in this story with Joshua, that it says the spies, he added this, the spies that went into the land of Israel by Joshua. Moses sent spies in and Joshua sent spies. And the ones sent by Joshua are called Na'arim. The term men, Anoshim, is applied to these same men in other verses. So they're normally called men, grown men. These were leaders, these were adults. But when he sent them, they're called Na'arim. And the question, he says, why are they called Na'arim? Why do you call them lads? And he explains they're called Na'arim is because they were serving the public. They were servants of the public. They weren't children, they weren't young, they weren't attendants, but they were serving the public. And that's why they're called Na'arim. And as we know, people that we elect are called servants of the public. And the idea is that these people are supposed to, they're not necessarily supposed to do what the public wants them to do. They're supposed to serve the public. But they serve either their own agendas or whatever master it is. But they're called servants. So that's where the word nar is, or attendant. The Ramban also explains that he's called bin Nun. Why is he called the son of Nun? And he explains that the word Nun, bin Nun, also means understanding. That of all the students of Moses, he was the one that understood more than the others. So he was called Joshua, who understood more than all the other students of Moses. And also the word in Psalms chapter 72 uses the word Yinun, which means mastery. And so he mastered himself. A person who's a master who works on himself is always growing, never finishes growing. When Moses was a basket case, when he was a little baby in the basket, it says there in Exodus chapter 2, and behold, a na'ar is crying. And the Sephorno writes that the term na'ar means movement. So it's not na'ar as in a child or a baby, but there's a movement of crying there. They didn't see the child, they just heard, and they saw something. So it was a movement. Interesting. So why is a child called a nar? It explains it's because nar means movement, and from when you're born the child starts moving, and then it has to develop. So when it starts moving, it's called nar. Not a boy, but a movement. And it continues with movement as it grows. So growth is called na'ar. So everyone will tell you it means a child or attendant, but it actually means growing, movement. Now, a na'ar, someone who attends a master, is also called a nar because they always have to move to do what the master wants. You always have to move to do what the boss wants. And the boss is never satisfied, so you're never complete, because it doesn't matter what you do, the boss is going to want something else, something more, so you're never complete, you're always moving. Also, the least important of a sheep, of a flock of sheep, one that strays behind, that's always there, also called a nar. Now, so in Judges chapter 1, it writes there that from birth a child is called a nar. And the Talmud states that nar, the term nar, can refer to a girl as well as a boy. Even though na'ara, in Hebrew you have masculine and feminine, and na'ara would be a girl, but a child can be called nar, whether it's a boy or a girl. Once the girl grows old enough to have a relationship with a boy, then they'll put on the hay to make it feminine. But until they're sexually active, or can be, they don't make it the difference between masculine and feminine. You can if you want to, but sometimes they just use the same term. The Shekhinah, the divine presence, is also called nar and na'ara, both. And the angel Matat, there's an angel called Matatron, where it's people who know angels, but we say matat. We don't say the whole name of the angels, actually, because you don't want to accidentally call upon an angel if you don't know what you're saying. So we often just leave out the end. Certain angels, you don't know the powers and energies, and normally it doesn't do anything, but if you have the right consciousness, you could. If as rare as it is, you don't want to be in that space. So we just say matat. It's also called a nar. Why is it called a nar? Because it serves the divine presence of that level, the creator in that level. The Talmud also says that till 13, a boy is called a nar, and from that day on, he's called an ish, a man. The Medrash and Mishlei brings 3 ages until which a person is called a nar. It brings 20, 3 different opinions, 20, 25, and 30. 20, for example, it says that a person cannot be punished by the courts until they're 20. So you're still considered a juvenile, I guess, till 20. 30, for example, a priest cannot serve until 30 years old. At 30 years old, they're now old enough to serve. So it's an idea of maturity. When you're mature, you're a man. Before that level of maturity, for whatever that specific thing is, you're still called a nar. Lubavitcher Rebbe in Likutei Sichos explains that each person has an aspect of nar. As it says, who is a wise person? One who learns from all people. You're always learning from people. Thus, the nar actually refers to a state of incompletion. And Joshua was still a nar. He was not complete. He hadn't become a man. He'd become a man as a mature person, but he hadn't become complete in himself. His completion was when he became a leader. And then he needed a wife to make sure. But he was called a nar because he wasn't complete in his own journey. And a virtue of a nar is something that's simple trust and faith. At the time of giving the Torah, the Jewish people said, we will do, and then we will understand. In other words, their answer was that by doing, they understood a lot of things, but they knew that by doing, that will help them understand more. And if you don't do, you can analyze from day to tomorrow. If you don't act on something, you won't understand the more. So they said, we will do, and then we will understand. So the whole nation of Jewish people is also called a nar. And we find that in Hosea chapter 11, Ki nar Yisrael v'ohavei, that Israel was a nar, I loved him, and since Egypt I called to my son. So God calls the Jewish people a child since Egypt, and says they're like a nar. Now the Radak in Sefer Shorashim writes that there's a double expression of the word nar, v'hanar no'ar, in Samuel 1, which means that the child, Samuel, was older than his age. All other kids of 2 years old were children of 2 years old. He had understanding and wisdom far beyond his age. So there the idea of nar is also explaining that he was wise and sharp. And some explain that means that he understood the difference between good and bad. Anyway, the term Nara, which we said is feminine, in Chronicles 1, and it's actually very fascinating. I'm not going into the whole thing because it's a little bit strange, but it says there, Achshur, who's the founder, it actually uses the word father, of Tekoa, had 2 wives, Chela and Naira. And the Talmud says that he actually had 1 wife, but she was like 2 women. First she was called Chela, which means sick, and he looked after her like a father, and then she healed and became like a Naira, a young girl. But it's very interesting, the Gemara also, because it says that who is this guy Achshur? It was Kalev. And previously, in the previous chapter, it has Kalev had a wife with different name and children there, and it describes the meaning. It actually describes the meaning of the names. So even though it's complicated because it looks like one guy with different wives and different children, if you say it's the same, But when you go into the Hebrew, the Gemara says it actually has different meanings. So often in Hebrew, the reason why people are called names, in the Torah you find it throughout, that the same person has different names depending upon what they're doing, on their actions, or stage in life. Anyway, in Psalms 37 it says, I was a nar and I have age. I was young and I have age, zakanti. The Talmud says that Matat, the angel who's in charge in the world, he's the one that says this verse. And since the angel serves the Creator, he's called a nar, but sometimes the angel is called a zaken. When is it called a zaken? When the angel is serving in the world of Yetzirah. This is more Kabbalistic, but there are different worlds, 4 general worlds: Bria, Yetzirah, Asiya, Bria, Yetzirah, Asiya, and Atzilus. And when he's serving it in the world of Yetzirah, then the angel Matat is called a nar. But when he goes to a higher level, or to rise to Atzilus, then he's called a zaken, old, ancient. This is similar to Genesis 24, where Eliezer, the servant of Abraham, he's serving Abraham, but when he has to find a wife for Isaac, he's given over everything. He's given everything that Abraham owns. Then he's called a zaken. He's called old. So that responsibility changed the relationship. Another aspect of Joshua is that he was. It says in Numbers 27 that he was a man who had spirit with him, ruach. Ruach is actually the level of the world of Yetzirah, where Matat, the angel, is called a nar. In Koheles Yaakov, it mentions that nar is an acronym. It has 3 letters: Nun, Ayin, and Resh. For those who know Hebrew letters, Nun can stand for Nahar, which is a river. Ayin can stand for Eitz, the tree, or Eden, and Rekech means firmament, which are all associated with the Garden of Eden. Thus, the term nar is synonymous with the intentions of the Garden of Eden. So the intentions of the Garden of Eden are not to be complete, but to be growing in your service with the Creator. Everything was complete, but that wasn't the purpose. The purpose is to grow. Anyway, so yes.
How could it be said to be complete if it still had room for growth?
If something's complete, does that mean it can't grow?
If something's complete, then it doesn't need to grow. That means it doesn't require any more
okay,
perfection.
and what did I say?
But you said that it.
I said the garden was created; it was complete.
Yes, it was complete, but it still had room for growth.
No, growth had to be created. That's what Adam and Eve did. They created imbalance in order that there should be growth. That was discussed in the past about what the tree means and what all the aspects of Garden of Eden. If everything is perfect the way it is it going to grow, or is it going to go the other direction? What happens when something is perfect the way it is in the physical realm? If you leave something alone,
if something is perfect, then it's balanced. So it doesn't
yes,
have to be balanced.
but if you leave it there, what happens over time? Is there a rate? Everything has a rate of decay.
Yes.
Okay, so it's either going forward or backwards. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. So if someone says something is balanced, what does that mean?
That right now it's balanced, but it could go either way.
Okay, so the fact I say it's balanced, what does that mean? That it was perfect the way it was. That doesn't mean something else didn't have to happen. That wasn't the purpose of creation. Wasn't to leave it in that balanced state. The purpose of creation was to move it so there would be growth. That's why everything had to change. Okay. So Abraham, in the story, Abraham and then Isaac is called a Na'ar. Why? Why is Isaac called a Na'ar here? Because he's serving the Creator. And the two Na'ara of the two lads that are with him are explained to be the Yetzer Hara and Yetzer Tov, the positive and negative inclination in a person. The two pulls in a person are the two Na'arov, the two things that serve the person. Abraham returned to his Na'arov, meaning to a place. He was in an elevated place, and when he finished, he went back to the place, to the world, where you have two pulls, a positive and a negative. In the place he had been to, there was no two pulls because he was beyond the physical and any other pull, so he was in one place. Now he came back to it. And in fact, later on in Genesis it says, Avraham Zakein, Avraham was a Zakein coming with days. And the sages say that till Abraham there was no Zikna. This actually goes back earlier to the story of Isaac and Abraham, where people said they look the same. But so it says that till Abraham there was no such a thing as Zikna. No one got old, or no one showed signs of aging. And I've always had, it's been very strange to me, because you have a baby, it looks the same as someone who's 20 and someone who's 50. It's very difficult for me to imagine that a baby that's always changing, the face is always changing, looks the same as someone whose face is older. So I've always had a little bit of a question what it means, and based upon this, it means exactly what it says, but I've never fully understood it. But based on this, the idea of Zikna is not about how they look physically, but it's about a spiritual level. So until Abraham, no one came to the spiritual level of Zikna, the level of Atzilus, the higher level. Everyone was serving the Creator, doing things in a lower realm. No one reached that higher realm. And so that's what it means, that until Abraham there was no Zikna, no one had reached that spiritual level of a Zakein. Now, just as a numerical thing, just to throw it in, the numerical value of Abraham and Isaac, Chesed. Abraham was Chesed, kindness. Isaac was Gvura. Those 4 words, including Abraham himself as a person, Isaac as a person, has a numerical value of 746, which is the same numerical value as the word Na'ar spelt out in full. When you take the letters and spell them out, Na'ar is Nun Ayin Reish, the Nun is Nun Vav Nun, Ayin is Ayin Yud Nun, and Reish is Reish Yud Shin. When you spell out the letters, in Hebrew every letter has a name, you spell out those names, it also comes out to 746. Just a similar resonance. In Proverbs it says, educate a child according to its way. So when it rises to Atzilus, when it's called a Zakein, it becomes older, which is represented in the idea of Shabbos. You have 6 days a week, and then you have a day that the energy rises to a different spiritual space, which is why we don't do work. And Shabbos is like a Zakein, it's older. Then when you go back to the lower level, when you leave Shabbos and you go back to weekday, you take the feeling of Shabbos with you when you go back. So it changes you, so even the weekday is not the same as it was the week before. So the idea of a Zakein is also, you go to a higher level, a spiritual level, then even when you go back, you take with you something of when you go back. So even people that have a death experience and they came back, something about it changes them. They bring something back with them that they're changed in. Okay, any questions before we go on? Okay. So the angel says, Altas Valtas Alei Mu'oma, don't do anything to him, which seems superfluous. It says, don't send your hand to him. What is this Altas Alei Mu'oma? After all that he went through, and you feel bonded in a space of pure love, what happened is that in order to achieve what he achieved, he had to be in a space of pure love, a place of no separation. Now, when there's a place of no separation, you hold on. You don't let go. And so Abraham had to be told or given a message to let go. And even when you let go, it's still enough because you still want to help. You still want to do. What can I do? What more can I do? So he has to be told, there's nothing more you can do. Don't do any more. With the same love you had in holding on, with the same love you have to let go. Let him be who he is. Don't try to guide. Till now you had to guide and help. Now you have to stand back and let him guide himself. If he needs you, he'll come to you, but otherwise you have to let him go himself. The same love is two opposites, but it's not always easy for a person to transition between the two. Normally you have love and you want to give it so much, bury the person in it, that you don't let them be themselves. But that same love really should be there to let the person be who they are. But that's where you stand back already. So, but it's the same love that you're giving them. It doesn't mean it's easy to stand back either. But that's part of growing. The knowledge that you have to let things be is part of growing. So don't do anything. He's complete the way he is now. Ki ata yadati, because now I know. Now the word ki is because ata, now. It means from the past till now, yadati, I know. Or it means I have pity. So in the simple translation, the angel is saying, now I know. But if it's a messenger of the Creator, the question is, who is saying it? Is it the angel or is it God saying it, just the angels repeating it? Or does it have other meanings? So we'll have a look at some of the other meanings. I don't know if you've heard, in England, from 1604 to 1657, there was a guy called Rabbi Menashe ben Israel. He was well known in England at that time. He was a statesman, and he wrote a book called the Conciliator, where he takes different verses from the whole Tanakh and he explains questions people have and gives answers. So he writes there in his commentary, it has to be noted that the word yadati is a common verb in the first person singular and past tense. Therefore it means to say, now I knew, as if he stated, from now. Therefore it embraces both the past and future in saying, from now I knew. Either way, he writes, the doubt is solved and there is free will. I don't go into it here, but he has a whole discussion of, is there free will, or the fact that God knows what's going to be, is it predetermined? He discusses it and he says, either way, there is free will. In other words, it doesn't matter what perspective you have, the person has to make a choice. You can philosophize on why a person has it, if it's free or not. Is it going to change the fact that you have to make a choice? No. So you have the free will to make a choice. Anyway, in the case of stone, it says Edo, where God says, I will go down and look at what's going on and I will know. So the verse there in Genesis 18, it doesn't mean God says I will know. It means the Ibn Ezra says it means I will have pity. I will go down and I will have pity. And the same thing in Exodus chapter 2, also where God says he heard the cries of the Jewish people, and he will know. Vayidalkim, and God knew. He knew about it. It doesn't say he knew. It means he had pity. That's what the Al-Sheikh writes there. So you hear translations, but the words have other meanings too. And that's why people don't have answers to the questions, because they don't know the different meanings of the words. Which is good, because if you wanted to know meanings, you'd search it. There are plenty of books out there. You just have to know where to look, I guess. Anyway, it says in Deuteronomy to test, chapter 8, it says, to test or raise you to know that which is in your heart. So it's the essential idea is God's testing you to know what's in your heart. But the verse doesn't say whom the to know is. It just says to know. For who to know? It doesn't say who. It's not. There's no description in the verse who that is. So it can mean, as some explain it, that means to know, to let other people know what's in your heart, or let you know what's in your own heart. The word nes, as we explained before, doesn't have to mean test. It also means to raise. When a person knows what's in their heart, it raises them. Sometimes when other people know what's in your heart, it raises their awareness of you, and it can raise you too. Now, many times people have thoughts or attitudes or say something, but when it comes to action, to practical action, no one is home. They'll give you all the advice. They'll say they have all the opinions, but action doesn't exist. It doesn't. The two things don't coexist in their world. Sometimes you think you have friends until something happens, and they're not there for you. And sometimes you don't think you have friends, and when you need, suddenly someone is there for you. Sometimes a person will think to himself, oh, I can do it. But when it comes to it, they have to face their own limitations and realize, I cannot do it, or I can't finish it. People sometimes think, so sometimes what happens through having to do something, it shows you your own limitations. Sometimes a person thinks they cannot do something, and then a situation comes up and suddenly they do it. They didn't know they could do it. So all these things you can call tests, but they're not. They're really experiences that let a person know where he or she actually stands. So Abraham was focused on his connection and bond with the Creator, and not limited by anything. He was just going forward. And because he was so focused, he was taking Isaac out of the body, going as a soul. He had prepared everything. He was there, but he didn't know his own limitation. He had to be told, okay, no more. Time to go, but turn around, go back. Now, it was an experience that brought out that he was connected with the Creator on all levels of his being. Abraham didn't know if he could actually achieve what he did now, but because he was told to do it, he went ahead, focused, and did it. On his own, he wouldn't have thought to do it. It was a very difficult journey. It's not easy to gather all your energy from all levels of yourself. So his heart and soul became very exposed, and when you're on that level, it's very difficult. You definitely can't live among people with your heart and soul exposed. But in the world he went to, it wasn't a problem. Coming back here was an issue, because he had to then deal again with the world we're in. And we'll find this later on also by Isaac and Rebecca, where they were also very sensitive. It says by Isaac and Rebecca, when Esau went off the way, he married Basmas. He took some women they didn't like. The expression is that the Hebrew expression can be translated as they felt like they want to die. They felt like they could expire, because they were very sensitive. They lived their own life, secluded basically from everything else, and when something didn't work out, it was just almost too much for them. Anyway, so it says, the angel says, Ki yirei elikim ato. Now I know that you yirei elikim, you fear God. Now, or the power boundaries. Avram Abulafia writes, he has many books that he wrote, and one of them is Mafteach HaChachmas, different wisdoms, I guess. And he writes there that angels don't know what's in a person's heart. So the angel if you're talking about a real angel, the angel couldn't have known what's in his heart. So when he says, now I know, it's very strange because, what do you mean now you know? Angels don't know what's in a person's heart. It's not relevant to them. He says, it doesn't say, it says Malach Hashem, the 4 letters Yud Kei Vav Kei. It doesn't say you fear Yirei of Yud Kei Vav Kei. It says Yirei Elikim. So it has a little bit of a different meaning. The idea of a test, or idea of the need to experience, comes from Elokim, the power of boundaries, the limitations, judgments. And so it's the level of Elikim that you need to raise a person from, but not Yud Kei Vav Kei. That's why the chapter begins, Elokim, the power of boundaries, raised Abraham, because of limitations and judgment and boundaries, he needed to be raised. But once he got to the other level of Elokim, the level this messenger is coming from, there is no need to raise anymore. And there are several different ways of translating. Yirei doesn't just mean fearing. Yirei can mean awe, but Yirei can mean seeing, that you see. Now, when you're on a level that's beyond the physical, seeing everything is a natural thing. It's nothing special. When you're in this realm, wow, this guy can see this guy can hear that, then it's special. So for Elikim, it was special that you could see. But for the angel, it wasn't special. It was that for the messenger on that level, it was a normal thing. Another way of explaining is that he was saying, Abraham, on the level you are of love, the level that you achieved is from love. And on the level of love, everything is fine. You don't need fear. The idea of fear, of working with fear, is only in a lower level. And the fear there is not a fear of God, but it's a fear of doing the wrong thing. In his journey, he had to be careful not to do the wrong thing for Isaac. Now that he's finished doing what he did, he has to stop that love and he has to change direction. He has to go back to limitations. And the fact that he listened and went back to limitations showed that he was afraid of the limitations of the world we live in. He knew what they could be. So it wasn't fear of God, it's fear of God, but the limitations of things in the creation. Ata, you are. In Abraham, Isaiah is called Avram Ohavi. Abraham, the one that loves me, is called one that loves God. So why would it say now that he fears God? Especially if love is greater than fear. Why would you call him, say you're someone that has fear if love is greater? So, but the way we've explained it, it has a different meaning. It's not fear. It has a very fear of doing the wrong thing, or it's a different meaning. Teferes Shlomo writes, the whole Akeida was from love. He says, Ato Yadati, now I know, Ki Yirei Elikim, not that you have a fear of Elikim, but Yirei Elikim, Elikim, the limitations and boundaries and judgments are afraid of you. In Hebrew, it's a funny thing. It's not like English. The words Yirei is fear, Elikim is power boundaries of God, but the words that we add in between, it doesn't have in Hebrew. A lot of these words. So it just has certain main words, and then you put in what you think it means. And it can actually mean both ways. A lot of Hebrew can work both ways depending on where you put the punctuation. And so it could mean that that Elokim, all the aspects of Elokim, of boundaries and judgments of the world, are afraid of you because of who you are and what you've achieved. Another aspect is Ki Yirei Elikim Ata. Now that you have listened and you've let go of Isaac to go on his journey, now I know that you're accepting that the world can continue going in the way that it was created to go based on limitations and judgments. Ki yirei kimata, I know that now you allow the world to go the way it goes, even though you come from love. So again, it's a different way of looking at the words in Hebrew. V'lo chasachta, you did not restrain or hold back, but cheshech is the same word as chasachta, which means making dark. So the word v'lo chasachta means you didn't hold back, but if it were read chashachta, it would mean you didn't keep him in the dark, obscurity or ignorance of me. You took him on the journey, which would fit in perfectly. Now, the law, which is negative, you can say v'loi, and the negativity, chashachta, you put in the dark. Because of your love, there was no negativity, that was all in the dark. And now you have to come back to the world with negativity, or he has to deal with it. That's another way of twisting the words, if you wish. There's a double expression here. It says al tishlach, don't send, and it says al taz, don't do. And so it's you did not hold back, and to hold back, there's a double expression here of what is going on. So basically, double expression is because he had to hold himself back from being pure love in order to let go of Isaac to be able to do what he had to. So there was a lot going on, I guess. As bincha, you didn't hold back your son or your binyan, your own being. As yichidcha, your only one, your soul, mimani, from me. And earlier it says as yichidcha shahavta, the only one which you love. Here it doesn't say the word love, it just says yichidcha, your only one or your soul. It doesn't need to say it because we know that he has the pure love, because that's what he came to that level, spiritual level, that was out of the body through that love, because he didn't see the limitations. And when you have pure love, you don't see any limitations. You go all the way. So it says your yechida, not the ahava, because the issue here was to elevate the yechida. His soul was elevated, his essence was elevated, Abraham's essence was elevated by being brought out through the action. But the love itself is not what needed to be elevated. Yeah. All right. Any questions?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
I understand. How could it be that the concealment, the boundaries were had a fear of Abraham? You said that's one possible way of looking at it.
Right.
So how could that be? It's a concept. It's not a person.
Fear is a concept. Boundaries are a concept or a reality.
Well, it's a physical thing, but it's also a concept.
Okay. As a concept, nothing is a contradiction. As a reality, there are energies. Everything is an energy. There are forms and feelings that are not, you don't see. You feel things. There are things that block you from things. Do you know what blocks you from different things? Do you know the energies around you, what they do to you, or what you do to the energies around you by your thinking, by your actions? Are you aware of it?
No.
No. Why are you not aware of it? Because you don't see it. You don't have the awareness to see it, hear it, or feel it. Okay? But they exist. So they are real. Just you don't have the tools to quantify it, to know exactly what it is. But they are real. So when a person is very open and sensitive, they feel and see a lot of things that other people don't see. And they sometimes judge themselves as being crazy because everyone tells them they're crazy, but they're not. They're just open and sensitive. So it is real. And in order for everything to exist, there has to be boundaries. That's what Elohim means. Elohim means that in order for the Creator to create, the Creator that has no beginning, no ending, no structure, no form or shape, you can't create form and shape from something that doesn't have form and shape. So what the Creator did was created the idea, the energy of boundaries. As everything has a boundary, and as long as there are boundaries, things exist. If the boundary that we have stopped existing, color, form, shape, sound, everything would dissolve instantly. It wouldn't be able to hold. There is something holding everything together. There's something limiting your vibration and frequency so you can see colors, so you can hear things. If you didn't have those limitations, which are protecting you as well, all this would disappear. So from the reality we're on a lower frequency or a slower vibration, so it all appears here. When you go to a much faster frequency of vibration, then all this changes. Yeah.
So what you're saying actually is that Abraham got to a space so far above those boundaries that the boundaries themselves, the concept of fear could exist because he superseded or went beyond them.
He went beyond them.
So it's a concept sort of them having developed a new respect.
So the boundaries themselves, the energy and feeling the boundaries knew that Abraham knew the secret, that they're limited and he's beyond them. So they were afraid of him because they knew he knew the truth. Most people don't know the truth, so boundaries don't care. How often do you have people afraid of someone because they know that person knows the truth? Now, there's nothing to be afraid of the truth, but people are.
A lot of people like choose to live in ignorance because
they feel safer.
Yeah,
they feel safer being ignorant. Yeah,
it's a sense of security in being ignorant, being limited to the world that you're living in right now.
So is ignorance brilliant or not?
Ignorance is bliss.
So if you understand everything, then you shine, then you can be brilliant. And if you don't, you're not brilliant. You can think you are. That doesn't make you. And the energies of creation and the powers of the world know that. You can think whatever you want, but there are people beyond you who also see. There are other people who look, and they see whatever you want to hide, they see. You can see people hiding things. And you can see people making a big noise and showing things, and what they show tells you what they're hiding, but they don't see it. That's normal. Anyway, so I think we'll stop here today. And basically what we did today is we've learned about going on a journey of out of the body, a spiritual journey, or a journey where you connect with someone with pure love. All the other things fall away. And the other person knows that, you know it, and it's not always easy coming back to deal with the reality of the world. And people go into spaces and out of them, and they feel better in this space, not so good here, but they often don't take it to its full spectrum of where it applies and how it applies. They just apply it in the limited framework where they see it. But Abraham took it to its nth degree, and that's why he was able to achieve a space that no one before him may have achieved and come back from that space, because he did it with a balance, he did it with wisdom and understanding. And if you do have love but you don't have the wisdom and understanding, then you get very hurt. And that's why a lot of people who do things out of love get hurt, because they don't know the limitations of what exists around them. And so you need wisdom. Ignorance is good until it smacks you in the face. Okay.